Found. One word. That was all his intelligence man said into the phone. One word, then an address, and Kang Junho was already moving. The car was still rolling when he opened the door. His security lead grabbed his arm. "Sir." Junho gave him the look that ended conversations. The man let go. 7 hours. His son had been missing in Atlanta for 7 hours. For all 7 of those hours, Junho had been running the most powerful crisis operation his organization could assemble. 17 men in rotating shifts. 2 police precincts quietly pressured into dedicating off-book resources. Every camera feed in a 6-mile radius pulled and reviewed. The name Kang Junho, spoken in certain rooms in Atlanta, Houston, and Los Angeles, was the kind of name that made grown men measure every word before they let it leave their mouths. None of it had found a 6-year-old boy in a green backpack. A woman working the overnight shift at a 24-hour laundromat had found him. She had found him in the alley at 2:47 in the morning when she went to bring in the trash cans. She had carried him inside. She had fed him, she had called 911, and then, when one of Junho's men called her private cell and told her in no uncertain terms to keep the boy there and speak to no one, she had said, "I wasn't planning on going anywhere." 6 words. That was the detail living in Junho's chest as 3 black cars drove hard through pre-dawn Atlanta toward Peachtree Industrial Boulevard. Not the relief, though that was enormous. Not the fury at how it had happened, though that would come. It was those 6 words. In his world, a world of men who calculated everything and stayed only when it served them, a person who stayed because a child was cold was a kind of person he had stopped believing existed. The cars stopped. He was already out. Through the glass, he could see a woman standing very still beside an orange plastic chair. On the chair, small and calm, with a backpack on his lap, and a ramen cup in both hands, was his son, looking up at the woman the way Soken looked at things he had decided were important. Junho pushed through the door. He did not know yet that he was about to meet the woman who would spend the next 9 months quietly and without any agenda finding every lock he had built around himself and opening every single one. He only knew his son was safe, and she was the reason. But go back 2 hours. Go back to the alley. Because before the 3 black cars and the 17 armed men and Kang Junho pushing through that laundromat door at 4 in the morning, there was just a woman and a child and a decision made in less than 1 second. 2:47 in the morning. A narrow alley behind the 24-hour laundromat on Peachtree Industrial Boulevard, Atlanta, Georgia. 1 buzzing yellow bulb. Dumpsters against chain link. That was the whole world at that hour. Renee Caldwell pushed the back door open to drag in the trash cans before the truck. Came at 3. Cold air hit her face. She stepped out, and she nearly tripped over a child curled at the base of the dumpster. Knees to his chest, green backpack clutched to his stomach, jacket far too thin for a November night. She dropped the trash bag. The boy opened his eyes. Korean features, maybe 5 or 6 years old. He looked up at her from the concrete, not screaming, not running, not crying, just looking. The way children look when they have decided that whatever comes next cannot be worse than what came before. "Baby," Renee said, going to her knees without 1 second of hesitation. "How long have you been out here?" He thought about it. "Since the stores closed," he said, 7 hours. The same 7 hours Junho's empire had been searching. Renee picked him up, backpack and all, and carried him inside. She did not yet know his name. She did not know about the 17 armed men or the 6-mile camera sweep or what the name Kang Junho meant in certain rooms. She only knew a child was cold and she was the person standing there. So she stayed. And in staying, she walked, without knowing it and without any map for what was coming, directly into the most unexpected and most devastating love story of her life. This channel exists for stories that cost something and change 2 people from the inside out. Like, subscribe, and drop your location in the comments. We are so glad you found us tonight. The laundromat was warm, thick, and fabric soft, smelling of detergent and the steady industry of a place that never closes. Renee set the boy on the orange plastic chair nearest the folding table and crouched in front of him. "What's your name, sweetheart?" He studied her, measuring. "Syoken," he said. Then, "My father says never give the last name to someone you don't know yet." "Your father's right," she said. "Smart man." Something moved in Syoken's face, something with a history behind it. "He is careful about most things," he said quietly. "He was not careful about me. Tonight. No accusation. Just fact. delivered the way a child delivers a truth he has been sitting with long enough that the pain has worn smooth. She heated her own 3 a.m. ramen and set it in front of him. He ate with both hands around the cup, carefully, the way children eat when hunger and pride have been fighting a long time. She picked up her phone and dialed 911. The operator answered on the second ring. 911, what is your emergency? I found a child, Renee said. He's safe and he's with me, but he's been outside alone for about 7 hours. Laundromat on Peachtree Industrial. She gave the address. The operator confirmed it, then asked, Ma'am, are you in a safe location? Renee looked at Seokin watching her over the rim of his cup with those careful, patient eyes. She thought about 17 armed men and a name that made people choose their words carefully. Yes, she said. She was answering for both of them. We're safe. She stayed on the line while Seokin told her the rest. His teacher in Seoul who said every star was a story not yet finished. The nanny who went home sick, the door that swung shut, the elevator, the keypad code he didn't know. He had walked until he found the light in the laundromat window. He sat in the alley because he was still deciding whether to knock. Why didn't you knock right away? She asked. I was deciding whether the person inside would be kind, he said. I was still deciding when you opened the door. He reached into the backpack and pulled out a folded piece of paper, worn soft at the creases from being read many times. He opened it. A crayon drawing. 2 figures in front of a tall building, one large in a suit jacket, one small with a backpack. Underneath, in careful printed letters, me and Appa. Appa, the Korean word for father. I carry it so I remember what home looks like, Seokin said. Renee held it one moment longer than necessary. She was handing it back when her phone rang. The 911 call was still. In her other hand, the operator still on the line. New call. Unknown number. She switched over. Ms. Caldwell. The voice was even, low, and carried no warmth at all. You called 911 14 minutes ago about a found child. Listen carefully. Do not speak to any media. Do not share the child's name. Do not allow him to leave that location. Someone is coming. Stay exactly where you are. The line went dead. Renee lowered the phone. Her hand was steady. 46 years had taught her steadiness. But her mind was moving fast. She looked at Seokin, who was looking back at her, and she thought, who exactly is this child's father? That was one of my father's people, Seokin said, completely calm. Routine energy, like a Tuesday. He always knows very quickly. Does he? Renee said. Don't be afraid, Seokin added. My father seems frightening at first, but he isn't. Not to people who haven't done anything wrong. He went back to his ramen. Renee looked at the dead screen and then at the laundromat door and thought, I am going to stay right here. Because there is a child on that chair who needs someone to still be in the room when that door opens. She stayed. The first black car stopped outside. Then a second. Then a third. The men who came in first were large and quiet. They moved through the laundromat the way men move when they have been trained to clear rooms and have decided, in this instance, not to. They positioned themselves near the doors without being told. They looked at nothing in particular and saw everything. And then Kang Junho walked through the door, tall, 6'2", dark coat over a dark suit, collar open, no tie. He had dressed fast. She could see that clearly. He had put on what was at hand, not what was chosen. That one detail told her more about the last 7 hours than anything else could. His eyes swept the room once, efficient as a scan, and locked onto Seokin on the orange chair. What happened in Kang Junho's face was not a small thing. Everything beneath the composure rose through it the way heat rises through stone. Uncontrolled, enormous, relief that buckled his chest, terror at what could have been, and love. The specific, helpless, total love of a parent who has spent 7 hours imagining the worst and is now looking at proof that the worst did not happen. All of it in 2 seconds. Then the composure returned, smooth and immediate, like water closing over a stone. He crossed the room in long strides. He crouched in front of Seokin, put both hands on his son's face, and said something in Korean, low and just a few words. Seokin answered. Junho closed his eyes briefly, kissed his son's forehead once, stood and turned. His eyes found Renee. She had stayed at the folding table, arms loose, not stepping back. She was a woman who had been meeting hard things directly her whole life. She saw no reason to change that now. He was silent for a moment. He looked at her the way people look when they are revising an assumption they didn't know they had made. You found him, he said. He He found himself, Renee said. I just didn't leave. One of his men started to speak. Junho raised one hand barely, a gesture so practiced it almost wasn't one, and the man stopped. He was outside for 7 hours, Junho said. He was, she said, scared when I found him. But he held himself together. He's stronger than he looks. Junho glanced at Seokin, who was watching the exchange with the patient attention of someone waiting for a specific scene to begin, then looked back at Renee. And for one beat, he looked at her not as a man assessing a situation, but as a man actually seeing a person. Your name, he said. Renee Caldwell. He reached into his coat without breaking her gaze and set a plain white card on the table beside her hand. No logo, just a number. Ms. Caldwell, there is nothing I can say right now that is adequate. I'd like to try again when I am less. He paused. When I am less. He didn't finish the sentence, but she heard the fracture underneath. A man running on terror and adrenaline for 7 hours trying to remember how to use his voice correctly. She picked up the card. Make sure that boy sleeps, she said. He's been up all night. For a fraction of a second, Junho's expression did something unplanned. Something that was not quite a smile, but lived in the same neighborhood. Yes, ma'am, he said. At the door, Seokin turned and looked back at Renee with those old, patient eyes. He gave her one deliberate nod, the nod of someone confirming that things have proceeded exactly as intended. 3 black cars into the Atlanta pre-dawn. The laundromat went quiet. Renee stood with the card in her hand, the machine still humming, the sky going slowly from black to the soft gray of an Atlanta morning. She thought about his eyes, the way they had found her across that room, direct and certain. And underneath the certainty, something that had nothing to do with gratitude and everything to do with recognition. She was not a fanciful woman. She filed it away. Not yet. He called 4 days later. Renee was folding laundry in her Decatur apartment. She would appreciate the irony later. When the card's number lit her screen, she let it ring once. Ms. Caldwell, the same voice, measured, each word load-bearing. Mr. Kang, she said. A pause. You know my name. You handed me a card at 4 a.m. after 3 black cars pulled up outside my job. Of course I looked you up, something that might, in a less controlled man, have been the beginning of a laugh. That's thorough, he said. I prefer careful, she said. There's a difference. He explained. Seokin had asked about her twice since coming home, not casually, pointedly. She laughed at something I said, and nobody does that. I want to see her again. Appa, I think you should call her. You're calling because your 6-year-old told you to, Renee said. I'm calling because my son is usually right, he said, and because I said I would say something adequate when I was less. A pause. I am less now. Dinner, myself, and Seokin, if you're willing. She said Saturday. She heard something in his silence, not relief exactly, something that had been held in a particular position for a long time and had just, very slightly, eased. The restaurant in Buckhead cost serious money without making noise about it. Renee arrived in a deep burgundy wrap dress she had owned for years. She walked in the way a woman walks when she has never needed a room's approval and therefore has always commanded it. Seokin leaped to his feet. He barely contained himself, nearly knocked over his water glass, caught it, straightened with great dignity, and said, Ms. Renee, you look very nice. Junho stood too. Dark suit, no tie. He caught an expression and controlled it in half a second, but she had already seen it, undisguised. Renee, she said, please. Renee. He said her name carefully, testing its weight. He pulled out her chair, not as performance, simply what he did. Seokin sat between them. I recommend the short rib, he said. I had it once before. It was exactly right. Dinner moved on Seokin's energy. Questions about Atlanta, Georgia constellations versus Seoul constellations, opinions about the bread delivered without apology. Junho said less than either of them, but listened in the way that changes the quality of the air in a room. About 20 minutes in, Seokin turned to Renee with his measuring expression, the one she now recognized as serious business, and said, Ms. Renee, if you could show someone one constellation, which would you choose and why? Renee thought about it genuinely. Orion, she said, because it's the one most people already know, so when you show them what they've been looking at their whole life, they see it differently, something they always had and didn't know. Seokin considered this with gravity. He nodded once. That is an excellent answer, he said. Renee glanced across the table. Junho was looking at her with an expression she would spend the rest of the evening trying to describe to herself and failing. He looked away when her eyes met his, but not immediately. Then, midway through the meal, one of Junho's men near the door made a very small and very quick adjustment toward a man at a corner table who had been watching Junho a few seconds too long. 4 seconds total. The corner table man looked away. Junho's man settled. Junho had seen Renee notice. Their eyes met. Neither spoke. But in those 4 seconds, Renee understood something she had only intellectually known before. This was not a man who happened to have security. This was a man around whom the temperature of a room changed. And she was sitting across the dinner table from him, and her heart was not afraid. That told her something about herself. When Seokin went to the restroom, Junho looked at her directly. "He hasn't been like this in a long time," he said. "Comfortable, easy, like a child. He's a remarkable child either way," Renee said. "He is," Junho said. Then quietly, "His mother would have loved watching him tonight." Past tense, landing between them like something fragile set gently down. She didn't press. She waited. "She died 2 years ago," he said. "Seokin was 4. I've been managing everything since. That is what I'm good at. Managing." The word carried its own weight, his greatest competence and the thing that had cost him most. Seokin came back. Conversation moved on. But Renee kept that fragment, "I've been managing," the way she kept things that mattered. Quietly. For later. On the Buckhead sidewalk afterward, Seokin looked between his father and Renee with the satisfaction of someone whose plan has entered its next phase. "We should do this again," he said, not a question. Junho looked at Renee over his son's head. Something was in his eyes, something that had been sealed for a long time, pressing gently against the seal from inside. "Yes," he said, "we should." By the 5th Saturday, Renee's kitchen smelled like him. Not perfume, just the particular warmth of a person who had spent enough evenings there to become part of the air. That 5th Saturday, it was raining. November rain in Atlanta, the kind that comes in sideways and paints the city silver. Renee had made chicken and rice, and the cornbread her mother taught her. They ate. Seokin talked. Seokin fell asleep on the sofa with his constellation book open on his chest, pages rising and falling with his breathing. Junho stood and picked up his coat from the chair where he had set it 3 hours ago. He put one arm in the sleeve. He looked at Seokin sleeping. He looked at the window. Rain still heavy, street outside silver and loud. And then he stopped. One arm in, one arm out. Still. The rain on the window. Renee was at the kitchen sink, watching his reflection in the dark glass without turning around. He took the coat off, slowly, without a word, without looking at her. He folded it over the back of the chair, sat back down at the kitchen table, and picked up his cup of tea that had gone cold an hour ago. Renee turned off the faucet. She came back to the table and sat across from him. She did not say anything about the coat. He did not say anything about the coat. From the sofa, without opening his eyes, Seokin said, "It's still raining," then nothing else. His breathing went back to the deep, even rhythm of sleep. Junho looked at his son, then at Renee. And in the quiet of her kitchen, rain outside, sleeping child, cold tea, both of them in the simple fact of not leaving. Something was said between them that neither had words for yet, and both heard completely. He left at midnight. He said goodnight at the door, formally, the way he always did. But at the bottom of the stairs he turned once and looked up at her in the doorway. That look was not formal at all. She closed the door and stood with her back against it for a long time. She thought, well, there it is. 3 weeks later, Seokin fell asleep on her sofa, mid-story, and Renee came back to find Junho still at the table, waiting. The Atlanta night pressed dark at the windows. "He told me something last week," Junho said. His voice was lower now, one wall down. He said, "Our home needed someone who laughs, like a diagnosis." "What did you say?" she asked. I didn't know what to say. A pause. I've been thinking whether he meant the apartment or something else. He looked at her. Something else. The kitchen was very quiet. "Junho," she said, just the way she said his name. Quiet and without armor made him go very still. "What do you think he meant?" She watched him decide, the careful version or the true one. She watched him choose. "I think he meant you," Junho said. "I think he has meant you since the night he sat in that alley and decided whether to knock." The words settled and stayed. "And you?" Renee asked. Her voice was steady. She was good at that. A long silence. He looked at his hands, then he looked back at her. "I'm trying to be a man who deserves to have an answer to that question," he said. "I'm not sure I'm there yet." "You're closer than you think," she said. He held her gaze longer than either of them acknowledged. Then he looked down, and she saw it, just at the corner of his mouth, fleeting and real, something that escaped before he could catch it. She felt it move through her like warmth. She stopped pretending she didn't know what it was. Some of you know exactly what this feels like. The slow build. The coat folded over the back of a chair without a word. The moment in a kitchen when you both know and neither of you is ready to name it. This story is for you. Keep watching. What comes next between Junho and Renee is everything. Share this with someone who needed it tonight. The night everything cracked open was a Tuesday in January. Renee answered at 11:15 saying what happened before Junho had spoken, because his number at that hour meant one thing. "Soken has a fever," Junho said. 103 and 1. Climbing. "He won't stop asking for you." A pause, unmanaged and raw. "I don't know what to do with that." "I'll come," she said. "You don't have to." "I'll come, Junho. The 41st floor, the penthouse, its high ceilings and Atlanta skyline like something belonging to a different world." The doorman who now nodded at her by name. The elevator opening into the foyer. Junho was in the hallway, coat off, sleeves rolled up, the posture of a man who had been pacing. He looked at her in the doorway of his own home with the naked, unguarded relief of a man for whom it was not only Seokin he had been waiting for. She went straight to Seokin. He was flushed and glassy-eyed, but reached for her hand the moment she sat down. She pressed a cool cloth to his forehead and talked quietly. The low, steady presence talk that is less about words than the sound of someone being there. She told him about Orion, clear and bright in January, one of the oldest stories in the sky. "Tell me the story," Seokin said. She told him. She made it longer and slower than it needed to be, watching his eyes get heavy. By the ending, he was asleep. She came out into the hallway. Junho had been standing at the edge of the doorway the entire time, a still dark shape at the threshold. He was looking at her with every wall down. She had never seen him like this. In all the months of Saturdays, careful conversations, the slow excavation of two guarded people, never once without any of it. No composure, no managed distance, just a man standing in his own hallway at midnight. "He's asleep," she said softly. "I know," he said. His voice was different, lower. "I heard his breathing change." They stood in the hallway and neither moved. The penthouse was completely quiet. The Atlanta skyline glittered through the far windows like something burning at a beautiful distance. "Come," Junho said. "Please." She made tea. She knew where everything was now. He wrapped both hands around the mug and stared into it. Then he began to talk. He told her about Hiran, the real version, precise, funny, warm in a way he had spent years trying to deserve. She had built their home into something real during all his absences, with a grace he hadn't understood until it was gone. The Monday in February 2 years ago when he was in Houston and his phone rang and the world ended in a 3-minute conversation. The decision to stay on the call until it finished, because if he put the phone down first, it would become real. From the bedroom, a small sound, not waking, just Seokin shifting in his sleep, a soft half murmur. Both Junho and Renee looked toward it at exactly the same moment. A beat of silence. Then his breathing steadied. They looked at each other across the kitchen. Then Junho kept going. He told her about the months after Hiran, the wall he built around the wound and called it work, called it strength. How Seokin had watched from inside that wall and accommodated himself to the reduced version of his father with a love no child should have had to summon. He told her all of it, without looking away. And Renee sat in the amber light of his kitchen and listened with her whole self, not preparing a response, just receiving it, just being there for it. When he finished, the silence was fuller and more honest than anything before it. "You've been carrying this alone," she said. "I did not allow there to be anyone," he said. "I know," she said. "I can tell." He looked at her. At this woman in his kitchen at midnight who had driven across Atlanta for a child's fever and was now looking at him with eyes that held no judgment, nothing but the clear-eyed warmth of someone who knows that pain is not weakness, that it is simply the cost of loving. "Renee," he said, her name at that hour. She felt it move through her like something physical. I don't know how to do this, he said. Feel things and stay present to them at the same time. I have been practicing, but I am not good at it yet. Nobody starts good at it, she said. That's not the question. What is the question? He asked. Her heart had been doing its thing for months. She made a decision. Whether you want to keep trying, she said. Something vast and slow moved across his face like weather. Yes, he said. I want to keep trying. And then he reached across the kitchen island, slowly and deliberately, the way he did everything that mattered, and put his hand over hers. His hand was warm. She looked at it, large and careful, resting over hers. Then she looked up at him. Everything that had been accumulating since a November alley was right there between them, real and enormous, and no longer something either of them would pretend away. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them needed to. In February, he took her to Piedmont Park on a cold, clear evening, just the two of them. Seokin was home with his new nanny, approved after he had interviewed 3 candidates with a written list of questions including, do you know any good stories? And what do you do when something is scary? He had reported results with the gravity of a senior hiring manager. They walked without hurrying. Junho had been learning to do this, to be in a place rather than passing through it. She had watched it happen across months, carefully, with more feeling than she let show. He told her the whole truth about the business, what his father had built in Seoul, what Junho expanded in America, the partnerships that had made him powerful and morally compromised in equal measure. He had been dismantling the compromised parts for 18 months. It would be finished by spring. You're telling me all of it now, she said. Why now? Because I want you to know who I have been, he said. Not as a confession, but as an honest account of the man standing here, so you can decide. She looked at the lake. Her father's rule, look at the eyes when they're saying the hard thing. She thought about all the Saturdays, the coat, the hand at midnight, every small, precise way he had been, showing her, for months, who he really was. Junho, she said, still looking at the water. I already decided. He stopped walking. She stopped with him. When she turned, his face was fully open, every door standing wide, a man who had been sealed for 2 years looking at someone who had, gently and without making it into anything, found every lock. Renee. Her name in his mouth at that moment was the most careful thing he had ever done with it. Say it plainly, she said. He turned toward her fully. He took both her hands. She felt the warmth of them, the steadiness. I love you, he said, not fast, slowly, with the full weight of a man who has chosen every word on purpose. I have been learning how to say that in a way that means something real and not just something felt. I believe I'm saying it that way now. She thought about the alley, the buzzing yellow light, me and Appa folded in his backpack. Every Saturday since, the coat, the hand, his heartbeat under her palm. I love you too, she said. I have been for a while. I was waiting for you to catch up. Something broke across his face, the unguarded breaking of a man who has been braced for a very long time and has just been told he can stop. He pulled her in. She put her hand against his chest and felt his heartbeat, faster than his composed surface had ever suggested it could get. She thought, there he is, the real one, sealed behind all that careful stone this whole time. Behind them, the February sky was cold and clear and full of stars. They told Seokin together on a Sunday morning in March. Spring light through the window, breakfast still warm in the air. Junho told him carefully. He loved Renee and she loved him and they wanted to build something together, and Seokin was at the center of it. Seokin listened with his hands flat on the table, slightly tilted, very still. When Junho finished, the kitchen went quiet. Renee felt something tighten in her chest. The specific anxiety of waiting for a 7-year-old's verdict on the most important question of the last 9 months. Both of them looking at Seokin. Seokin quiet for a long moment. Then, I know. Junho blinked. You know? I have known for a long time, Seokin said patiently. I was waiting for you to figure it out. Renee pressed her lips together. Hard. You sat in that alley on purpose, she said slowly. Seokin looked at her with the mild patience of someone explaining the obvious. I was locked out, he said. But I chose which direction to walk. I saw the light in your window from the end of the street. I knew someone working nights alone would not be afraid of a lost child. I thought the rest would happen naturally. The rest? Junho said. You mean? You needed someone, Seokin said simply. I needed someone to help you see that you needed someone. It seemed efficient. Then Renee laughed. Deep, full. From the belly, the laugh Seokin had apparently identified from a distance as the missing essential thing. And it got into Junho. 2. Not fought, not controlled, just let in. The full laugh that had been locked somewhere for 2 years, free now, changing his whole face. Seokin watched them with the serene satisfaction of an architect reviewing a completed structure. It went as I expected, he said. He asked her in August. Sunday morning, her Decatur apartment, first cup of coffee, Atlanta Morning Gold, and slow through the window. He set a small box on the newspaper she was reading, folded his hands, and waited. She looked at the box, then at him. Nothing to say? She asked. I've been saying things for 9 months, he said. I thought I'd let this do the talking. She opened the box. The ring was simple and entirely right. A man who paid attention had bought this, a man who saw her. Seokin helped choose it, Junho said. He said it looked like you. Of course he did, she said softly. She thought about the alley, the drawing, the coat, the hand at midnight, 9 months, every Saturday leading here. Where is he? She asked. In the car downstairs, Junho said. He didn't want to influence the outcome by being present. Renee went to the window, one black car at the curb. In the back seat, a small face pressed to the glass, hand shading his eyes to see in. She turned around. Junho was standing. His composure was present, but underneath it he was entirely exposed, waiting. Yes, she said. He exhaled. Long, slow, complete. The exhale of a man setting down something carried a very long way through a very long dark. He put his arms around her. She leaned in. She thought, I walked into an alley in the dark and found a child and chose to stay. Staying led here. And here is everything. Outside, a small figure in the back of a black car threw both arms in the air. They married in October at the chapel at Spelman College. Afternoon light through stained glass, the color of everything worth keeping. Renee's family filled one side. Her children, her sister, her mother, who had assessed Junho in 6 words. He looks at you right. Good. Junho's family filled the other side. People from Seoul, Los Angeles, and Houston who had the quiet, visible relief of watching someone they love come back from somewhere they weren't sure he would. Seokin carried the rings in a wooden box he had selected after rejecting 3 options, each with documented reasons. He wore a suit that matched his father's exactly. He walked down the aisle with both hands on the box, chin level, the expression of someone executing a meaningful responsibility with everything it deserved. When Renee came through the doors, Kang Junho looked at her, and every person in that room who had known him for more than a year went quiet, because what was on his face was not the face he showed the world, not the composed face, not the controlled face, the face underneath, open, present, entirely undefended. A man who had been standing at the door of his own life for years and had finally, completely walked in. His vows were short and direct, written without help, said without notes, without looking away from her. She said hers with her voice steady and her heart absolutely not. At the reception, Seokin danced. Without reservation, without dignity, with the full body face-up joy of a child who has completed a very long project and found it even better than planned. He danced with Renee's mother, with Junho's older brother who had not danced at a wedding in 15 years, and alone in the center of the floor while the adults made a circle around him. Junho stood beside Renee watching his son, laughing. The real laugh, full and free, the one that had been locked somewhere for 2 years and had finally learned its way out. He planned this from the night in the alley, Junho said. Before that, Renee said, he told me 3 weeks earlier that your home needed someone who laughs. The alley was just the method. Junho looked at Seokin still dancing, then back at Renee. He told me he saw your light from the end of the street. He said, whoever's working alone at 3 a.m. is either brave or kind, and either one would help. Renee felt her throat tighten. He wasn't the only one, Junho said quietly. I saw your light from the first night, too. She took his face in her hands and kissed him in the middle of the reception while their families watched. From the dance floor, without missing a single step, Seokin said, finally, in the tone of someone whose timeline has been honored, what they built after was the real kind of life. Not the version that looks right from the outside, the version that feels true from the inside, which is harder and worth everything more. The penthouse became what it had not been in 2 years, a place where someone laughed, where music played, where a child could simply be a child. Hiren's photographs went back on the walls, present the way people should be when they are gone. Spoken of, part of the living story. Seokin talked about her freely, her laugh, her habit of reading. 3 books at once, the way she made Junho's coffee wrong every single morning for 9 years with complete confidence in its excellence. He makes it the same way, Junho told Renee one morning, watching his son at the coffee maker. Exactly the same. Wrong in the exact same way. Is it terrible? She asked. He watched his son carry the cup carefully to the table with both hands. Yes, he said. I drink every cup. That was the whole thing, not the absence of loss. The decision to drink the coffee, to take your coat off and sit back down, to carry a child in from the cold and choose to stay, to walk toward a light in a window at 3 a.m. and let it find you. Seokin had known it from the beginning. He had simply waited with the patience of a child who believes the people he loves will find their way to each other if someone just points them in the right direction. He pointed. They found their way, and the light in the window had been on the whole time. If this story reached something in you tonight, if you felt the alley, the coat over the chair, the hand at midnight, the park in February, the wedding, the coffee, then this story did everything it was made to do. Real love is worth telling. Not the perfect kind. The kind that costs something. Subscribe right now. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and which moment stayed with you longest. Send this to the person who came to mind somewhere in the middle. You already know who that is. We will see you in the next one.